So there's a lot of discussion about higher education being an engine of inequality, and when people talk about that, I think they usually talk about it, thinking about it as the 18-year-olds coming into higher education. We have a giant problem in our country also, though, about the number of adults right now, working adults, who do not have even an associate's degree. It's something like 80 million adults who've started college or never went to college and don't even have an associate's degree, and another 15 million to that of those who have an associate's degree. These are people who are not going to get stuck in our economy ultimately. It's a very cruel economic picture we have in our country right now. If you don't, not every single person has to have a degree, but when we're talking in the broadest strokes, if you don't have higher education, some post-secondary education, and a credential to go with it, you're going to get really hurt by the economy. You're not going to have a good job, and you're not, as a rule, and you're going to suffer. So there is a giant economic argument and a moral argument in the country that if higher ed not only doesn't address the inequality problems of lower income kids coming out of high school, but adults right now who are lacking their degrees, if higher ed doesn't get on the ball with that, we're going to have a really bigger economic problem and a bigger divide. I talked to some scholars about this, including a gentleman named Richard Reeves, who's written a lot about the sort of the growing divide in American society. And he talked about it in a very interesting way. He said, we used to think about sort of our economy and our sort of social mobility system as a race with hurdles. You could knock a few down and it still didn't matter. You could still get a couple second chances. And our higher ed system is getting increasingly harder for people to get these second chances. And I feel like this creating more onboard ramps for adults are the versions of these hurdles where students can, if you weren't the greatest student when you were 18, if you had a family emergency when you were 21 and you had to leave school, if you never thought about school but you got to be 35 and suddenly you can't work construction anymore, higher ed needs to be much more forgiving for those kinds of students right now. Otherwise we're going to be really leaving, a giant, it's not a small slice of our population, that's like half the adult population we're going to leave behind unless higher ed really adapts.